I wasn't supposed to be home. That's what made it perfect. The meeting got canceled, and instead of wasting an afternoon at the office, I decided to surprise Jessica with her favorite pastries from Eastbridge Bakery. Thought maybe I'd earn a few husband points. Instead, I earned clarity. The moment I opened the front door, I heard them. Laughing. Wine glasses clinking. Voices floating in from the kitchen. "You just have to control the rhythm, Jess," said Jenna, Jessica's closest friend since college, the one who always wore control like perfume. "Act loving, patient, then drop the divorce bomb right after he's relaxed. He'll be begging you to stay, swearing to change. That's when you ask for the house." A beat of laughter. Then Marcy chimed in, Jessica's co-worker from her boutique job, whose voice always carried more venom than volume. "Don't forget the car," Marcy added. "A guy like Michael? He'll even offer it up if you just look heartbroken enough. Cry during the speech, extra tears if you can. Men fall apart when we pretend they've failed us." Jessica laughed. That laugh, light, performative, practiced. "I already told him last week how much I appreciate his sacrifices. You should have seen the way he looked at me, like I was his world." "Oh my God," Jenna cackled. "You're actually a queen. He has no idea." "That's the point," Jessica said, voice cool and measured. "I want him to feel safe. Then I'll tell him I've been reevaluating my emotional needs. Make him believe he's the one who broke me." I stood frozen in the hallway. Every word felt like a slap across the chest. My grip tightened on the pastry box. My throat dried out completely. "Why drag it out, though?" Marcy asked. "Just hit him with it now." Jessica's voice lowered to something intimate. Sharp. "Because if I do it right, he'll never even resent me. He'll hand over half his life, still thinking I'm the victim." They all burst into fresh laughter. "And if he gets difficult?" Jenna asked. "I'll tell people he's emotionally distant. That he never prioritized me." "It's not even a lie," Jessica said with a smug shrug. "I mean, he still wears those busted brown loafers to dinner." "Oh, girl," Marcy gasped, "don't roast the shoes." That's when something cracked inside me. Not loudly, quietly, like the first splinter in ice before it gives way. I backed up, step by step, retracing my way out the door like a ghost leaving its own house. They didn't hear me leave. Why would they? The fool wasn't supposed to be listening. Outside, I stood under our maple tree and stared up at the bedroom window. The place I thought was my sanctuary, it was a stage. And I was the joke. But not for long. I looked down at the box in my hand. The pastries were still warm, like a lie that hadn't cooled yet. I took a breath, so deep it shook in my chest. If Jessica wanted a performance, she'd get one. But mine would be the closing act. The air outside bit colder than it should have for mid-April, but I didn't feel it. I was walking, but everything inside me was still stuck in that hallway, echoing with Jessica's voice, her laughter, her game plan. And I kept hearing that phrase. Make him believe he's the one who broke me. It wasn't just betrayal. It was premeditated humiliation, a takedown wrapped in fake affection. But I wouldn't give them that scene. No shouting match. No begging. No accusations. If they wanted a fool, they'd get one, just not the one they expected. I passed a little flower shop tucked between a dry cleaner and a Thai place. The kind of shop I'd barely glanced at before. That day, I walked in like I knew what I wanted. A little bell above the door chimed. The scent hit me first. Roses, eucalyptus, something citrusy. Warm yellow lights and a slow jazz track playing on a record player in the corner. A world away from the war zone inside my chest. The florist, a soft-spoken woman in her 50s, looked up from trimming stems. Need help finding something? I nodded, my voice calm. Lilies. White. Freshest you've got. She gave me a polite smile, moved toward a small refrigerated display. Special occasion? I smiled back. Just love. Even saying it made my stomach turn. As she wrapped the bouquet in brown paper and tied it with twine, I watched her fingers. Steady. Deliberate. There was something oddly comforting in how carefully she worked. I wanted to match that calm. I needed to. Because what Jessica didn't know was that she'd just declared emotional war. And I wasn't walking in blind. You want a card with that? The florist asked, holding up a tiny white envelope. I hesitated, then nodded. Yeah, just right. You make the ordinary beautiful. She smiled again. That's lovely. Thanks, I replied. She deserves it. And she did, just not in the way the florist thought. I walked out, bouquet in hand, and for the first time since I'd heard their plan, I felt strangely composed, almost detached, like I was slipping into a role. And maybe I was. Because from this moment on, I wasn't Michael the devoted husband. I was Michael the player. I rehearsed it in my head on the drive home. The smile, the warmth, the timing. I could see the scene before it even happened. Jessica's expression when she opened the door, expecting nothing, and saw flowers in my hand. White lilies, her favorite. A message tucked neatly inside. She'd think I was blind. Still deeply in love. And that was the point. I didn't want to match her cruelty. I wanted to dissolve it with kindness so disarming, so precise, she wouldn't see the noose tightening until it was too late. By the time I pulled into the driveway, I had my mask in place. My hands didn't shake. My face didn't twitch. I was the same Michael she thought she knew, just a little more thoughtful than usual. I stood at the door for a second, took one last breath. Then I walked inside, bouquet first. The second I stepped into the living room, the energy shifted. Jessica was on the couch, one leg tucked under the other, wine glass in hand, laughing with the same two women I'd heard earlier, Jenna and Marcy. The same voices that had been rehearsing my downfall like a performance piece. But now, the only thing on my face was a smile. "Hey," I said warmly, holding the bouquet in front of me like it was nothing. "Figured I'd surprise you." All three women looked up at once. Jessica blinked. She hadn't expected me home yet, and definitely not with flowers. Her lips curled into something amused, almost condescending. "Michael, you're early." I walked over, kissed her cheek lightly, and handed her the bouquet. "Saw these and thought of you. Still your favorite, right?" She took them, barely glancing at the card, trying hard not to look rattled. "You didn't have to. I wanted to." Jenna tilted her head, smirking. "Someone's earning extra husband points today." "Oh, he does that," Jessica said with a little smirk. "He's sweet like that." I turned to Jenna, giving her a casual grin. "Well, when you're married to someone this beautiful, you try to keep her from realizing she could do better." That got a few polite laughs. Even Jessica chuckled, though I saw the flicker in her eyes. She wasn't sure what to make of it. "Can I get you ladies anything?" I asked, already moving toward the kitchen. "Wine? Sparkling water?" "We're fine," Marcy said, but I was already grabbing the bottle from the counter. Jessica liked her rose cold, crisp, no ice. I poured her a fresh glass and set it gently on the coffee table, just beside her knee. She stared at it like it might explode. "I missed you today," I added, sitting down across from them like everything in the world was right. "You look amazing, by the way. New dress?" Jessica gave a breathy little laugh, brushing hair behind her ear. "Yeah, just picked it up yesterday." I let my gaze hold hers. "It suits you." She held that gaze just a second too long, confused, but intrigued. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. I wasn't supposed to be charming. I was supposed to be fumbling, needy, boring. Jenna leaned forward. "You always this smooth, Michael?" I shrugged. "Only when I mean it." The room settled into a strange rhythm. Comfortable on the surface, but beneath it, the tension buzzed like a faulty wire. Jessica kept stealing sideways glances at me, and I could see the question slowly forming behind her lashes. Did he hear us? But I gave her nothing. No edge in my tone. No bitterness. No sign of the truth I'd buried just beneath my smile. She wouldn't see it. Not yet. "I'm going to go start dinner," I said finally, standing up. "Figured I'd make that pasta you like. You girls stay comfy." Jessica stared up at me like I was a new species. "You're cooking? I thought you deserved a night off." I kissed her forehead, careful and deliberate, and walked into the kitchen like the world hadn't just shifted entirely. Behind me, I heard Marcy murmur, "Girl, you're lucky." Jessica didn't respond right away. Lucky? Not quite. She was about to learn what it really meant to lose something you thought you controlled. And me? I was just getting started. It started with a compliment that wasn't really a compliment. We were in the kitchen. Jessica leaned against the counter, swirling the stem of her wine glass between two fingers while I stirred the pasta. Her friends had just left, full and flattered, waving goodbye like they'd just attended a celebration instead of a strategy session for my downfall. "You really outdid yourself tonight," she said, her voice light, syrupy. "I mean, the flowers, the food, the whole domestic thing. Makes me wonder why you haven't been this thoughtful the past few years." I looked up from the pot, feigning a smile. "Guess I just had to be reminded." She hummed, sipping slowly. "Well, keep it up. You've been tolerable lately." There it was. Her first jab, but I let it slide. I even chuckled. I'll take tolerable over unbearable. Progress, right? She tilted her head at me like I was a painting she was trying to decide if she liked. You know, she said, walking over to place her empty glass in the sink. Jenna thinks you're the type who could be trained. She says all men eventually fold if you push them the right way. Do you believe that? I asked, my tone soft. Curious. Harmless. Jessica gave a sly little grin. I think she might be right. You've been a lot more agreeable lately. I nodded, turning back to the pasta. I've just been thinking, maybe I haven't done enough to support you. Emotionally. Or, like, around the house. She blinked. That caught her off guard. I kept my voice low, almost uncertain. Maybe I've been too self-focused. Caught up in work. I don't know. I just want you to feel valued. She stepped closer. Her tone shifted, cool, detached, but now laced with something bolder. You really believe that? I turned and met her eyes. Yeah, that seemed to be enough. For now. Over the next few days, she tested me like a kid poking at a spider to see if it bites. On Tuesday, she walked into the living room while I was reading and dropped a stack of laundry on the coffee table. These need to be folded. Whites separated. Of course, I said, closing the book without hesitation. She raised an eyebrow. You're not going to whine about it? No, I said, smiling. You're right. I can help more. Her expression faltered for a beat. Then she nodded and walked away. On Wednesday, she made a joke at my expense in front of Marcy. Something about me not being ambitious enough to make partner, which wasn't even true, but I laughed along. I even added to it. Well, someone's got to keep the couch warm, right? The more I played into her script, the more confident she became. She saw my silence as surrender, my humility as weakness. And I could see it happening in real time, her growing belief that she held all the strings. One night, we were brushing our teeth side by side, an oddly intimate ritual for a couple preparing for war. She glanced over at me in the mirror and said, You know, I used to think you'd never be able to handle me leaving. I paused, spat, rinsed, then looked her dead in the eye. You used to think that? She smiled, but didn't answer. I smiled too. Well, maybe I'm just slower to adapt, but I think I'm learning. Jessica's confidence surged over the next few days. She started dressing a little sharper around the house, making louder phone calls in the next room, laughing a little harder at her phone screen when she thought I was nearby. She was preparing her moment, practicing it in her head like a speech before a big award show. And me? I was watching, memorizing every move. There's something dangerous about a man who stays silent long enough to see the entire battlefield. And Jessica had no idea that I wasn't playing dead. I was playing her. The law office was sleek. Everything about it, glass partitions, dark leather chairs, the faint smell of espresso in the waiting area, whispered a kind of clinical professionalism. Cold, sharp, expensive. Exactly what I needed. The receptionist gave me a tight smile when I arrived. Michael Bennett, 10:30 with Mr. Cranford? That's right. She gestured toward a frosted glass door. You can go right in. When I stepped inside, the man behind the desk didn't look up right away. He was in his 50s, clean-shaven, sharp suit, silver hair that probably cost more to maintain than my car's insurance. He looked like the kind of man who enjoyed winning arguments that left his opponents broke, divorced, or both. Michael, he said finally, standing to shake my hand. I'm Thomas Cranford. You've got that look. What look is that? I asked, half smiling. He gave a small nod, like a doctor confirming a terminal diagnosis. The one people wear when they've already been betrayed. And now they're here to make sure they don't get betrayed twice. I sat down without answering. He opened a notepad, clicked his pen. So, tell me why you're really here. I stared at the edge of his desk, running my thumb along the corner. I want out of my marriage. He didn't blink. You want a clean break, or a strategic one? That got my attention. I looked up. Explain. Thomas leaned back, steepling his fingers. A clean break is about closure. Honesty. Everyone walks away as intact as possible. A strategic break. He paused, watching me. That's for people who've been played, who want to make sure the other party doesn't walk away smiling. I didn't respond. I didn't have to. He nodded again, understanding. When did you find out? A few days ago. I overheard her and her friends planning it. She wants to make me beg, humiliate me, leave with the house, maybe the car. Thomas jotted something down, then set the pen aside. Well, good news, he said. You're early. Most men walk in here after they've already signed something they didn't read. I'm not most men, I replied. Clearly, we got into the details. I answered questions about income, joint accounts, property, her employment status, the equity in our home. He walked me through the steps like a general explaining troop movements. No emotion, just strategy. I'd suggest we file quietly, he said, tapping a folder. Without serving her until you're ready. Gives us control of the timeline. Once the papers are signed on your end, you can choose the moment. The delivery. I nodded slowly. Can you keep it discreet? Michael, he said, almost insulted. My clients include 2 city councilmen and a plastic surgeon whose ex-wife tried to sue for partial ownership of a chin implant patent. If discretion were an Olympic sport, I'd have medals. For the first time that morning, I actually smiled. He slid the draft papers across the desk. It's all here. Clean. Bulletproof. You sign when you're ready. I stared at the stack of documents for a long time. It didn't feel like revenge. It felt like armor. When I finally left the office, the sunlight hit my face like a spotlight. Everything looked ordinary. The coffee shop across the street, a couple arguing over a parking meter, birds picking at crumbs on the sidewalk. But inside, I felt sharper, clearer, not angry, not sad, just focused. Jessica still thought she was orchestrating a perfect performance. She thought I was the quiet audience waiting for the final act. She had no idea the curtains were already closing, and I was the one pulling the rope. The laundry room always smelled like lavender. Jessica insisted on that. Her little sanctuary of order, where everything was folded just so. Towels rolled like sushi, labels always facing outward. Even the detergent had its special place, a glass jar with a handwritten sticker, soft breeze, hypoallergenic. She took pride in these details. The house might be falling apart underneath us, but if the laundry looked perfect, she felt in control. That made it the perfect place to start. She handed me the basket that morning without looking up from her phone. You can throw this in, she said. Delicate's on cold. And don't use the regular stuff on the silk blouse. Top item. You'll ruin it. I nodded, keeping my expression mild. Got it. She barely glanced up. Seriously, Michael. That white blouse cost more than your car insurance. Do not screw it up. I held back a smirk. Of course. She left the room. I waited 10 seconds, listening to her heels clicking across the hardwood, then the murmur of her voice in the living room. Another call with Jenna, no doubt. More whispered strategy. More cruelty behind a curtain. I reached into the cabinet, pulled out the jar labeled blueberry fabric soak, something she used for towels when she wanted that spa scent. It stained anything white if used in large amounts. I twisted the cap off slowly, poured a generous splash directly onto the blouse. It soaked in like ink into snow. Then I added a few other clothes. Started the cycle. Cold wash. Delicate. And waited. 15 minutes later, she walked in. Hey, did you? Her voice stopped. She opened the washer mid-cycle. Pulled the blouse out like she was handling a wounded bird. It looked like tie-dye. Pale blue veins streaked across the front like lightning scars. Jessica froze, staring at the fabric. Her eyes narrowed. I walked in at the perfect moment, holding my coffee, casual. Everything okay? She turned, holding the blouse up like a corpse. What is this? I frowned. Oh no. Did something bleed? Did something? Michael, what did you put in here? Just the detergent, I said, stepping closer. And that spa stuff you like. Her eyes widened. The blue soak. On this? Are you serious? I thought it was. You ruined it, she snapped. This is silk. You don't just toss silk in with random garbage. I raised both hands. I'm sorry. I didn't know. You said spa stuff. I thought. Do you even listen to me? She snapped, voice rising now. You don't think, you don't pay attention, you just float through everything and now. Now I've got nothing to wear to Marcy's party tomorrow. I'll buy you a new one, I said quickly. You don't even know where I got this. It was custom. I let my expression fall, shoulders dropping just slightly. You're right. I'm sorry. I wasn't thinking. She stared at me, seething. But beneath the rage, I saw it again, that flicker. The misinterpretation. She thought I was slipping. Nervous. Ashamed. That she'd broken me down so far, I couldn't even handle a washing machine anymore. Perfect. I'll clean it, I said quietly, reaching for the blouse. Don't, she snapped, snatching it away. You've done enough. She stormed off. And just before the door shut behind her, I heard her mutter under her breath. Pathetic. I stood alone in the laundry room. listening to the sound of her heels fade into the upstairs hallway. Then I picked up the detergent lid, smiled. One more fracture. One more thread loosened in her perfect little performance. The thing about control is, once you think you have it, you stop looking for danger. She didn't see the danger. Not yet. Business trip, I told her. 2 words. No details. No explanation. Jessica barely looked up from her phone when I said it. Where to? She asked like it mattered. Upstate. Team offsite. Couple days. She nodded slowly, her eyes still fixed on the screen. Don't forget your laptop. And don't call me if it's just to check in. I'll be busy. Of course. The suitcase had already been packed the night before. Just enough to seem like a trip for work. Button-down shirts, a notepad, my work badge shoved casually into the front pocket. But I wasn't going to a hotel, or a conference center, or anything remotely tied to my job. I was going to the lake. 2.5 hours north, tucked between pine-covered hills and silence thick enough to hear your heartbeat, was a cabin owned by Drew, an old friend who knew more about me than I'd ever put into words. He and Caleb were already waiting when I arrived, a fire crackling in the stone hearth and a cooler full of beer sweating beside it. Drew clapped me on the back as I stepped inside. You look like a man trying to keep it together in public. Caleb grinned from the couch, and barely succeeding. I'm fine, I said, setting my bag down. Sure you are, Drew muttered, already cracking a beer open and handing it to me. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, the kind only long friendships can allow. No need to fill it. No one asking for updates. Just the sound of the wind brushing against the windows and the pop of wood splitting in the fire. Eventually, I spoke. I told them everything. From the hallway eavesdropping to the blue-stained blouse. The fake apologies. The silent divorce papers waiting in a folder back home. They didn't interrupt. When I finished, Drew let out a long whistle. She really thinks you're broken. She doesn't think, I said. She scripts. Rehearses. Controls. I'm just her final act. Caleb leaned forward. So what's the endgame? You gonna blow it up all at once? No, I said, shaking my head. I want her to walk straight into her own trap. Thinking she's directing the show. God, Drew muttered. I'd pay to see that. You might get to. We stayed up late that night. No heavy strategizing. Just old stories, quiet laughter, and the kind of solidarity that makes you feel less alone in the decisions you've already made. The lake outside was still, reflecting nothing but stars and pine shadows. And for the first time in weeks, I felt the weight shift. Not disappear, just redistribute. Like I was finally standing upright again. By the time I drove back 2 days later, the air felt different. Lighter in my chest. My thoughts were clearer. The dread that had fogged everything since that day in the hallway had thinned. Jessica was waiting in the kitchen when I got home. She didn't smile. She didn't ask how it went. Just glanced at the lilies I brought back, muttered, "Welcome back," and turned away. She still thought she was running the story. Let her think it. Because soon, she'd reach for her moment. And I'd be ready. Jessica was humming when I came through the door. A soft, off-key melody floating in from the dining room. Something she only did when she felt like she'd won something. The air was sweet with whatever perfume she reserved for dinners out and gallery openings. The kind meant to be noticed. She didn't say welcome home. Just a glance. Then turned back to whatever she was organizing on the table. You're back early, she said. Not surprised. Just mildly annoyed her game of pretend had ended before she was done playing house alone. Caught an earlier train. She didn't ask how the trip went. Didn't ask if I was tired. She barely looked at me. Instead, she picked up her phone and walked into the hallway, whispering. I stepped into the kitchen, set the flowers on the counter. Not lilies this time. Orchids. White and purple, elegant and rare. She liked to say they were too refined to be common. That they made a woman feel important. I listened carefully to her voice, just beyond the wall. He bought more flowers, she said with a breathy laugh. I'm not kidding. Orchids this time? No, I didn't even thank him. I just smiled and walked off. Girl, it's almost sad now. She laughed again. A low, smug sound. MHM. Yeah, he's still clueless. You should have seen him folding laundry last week. I almost felt bad for him. Almost. I took a slow breath. She was right about one thing. She should have felt bad. She returned a few minutes later, slipping her phone into her pocket like nothing had happened. Oh, by the way, she said, casually sipping from a glass of lemon water. Jenna and Marcy are coming by this weekend. We're doing that tapas place downtown. Sounds fun, I said. Jessica blinked, a little thrown by my lack of resistance. You don't mind? Not at all. In fact, I paused just long enough for it to register. Why don't I take you all out? My treat. That stopped her. She tilted her head slightly, trying to find the angle. You want to come with us? I insist, I said with a smile. You've been working hard. You deserve a proper night out. Drinks, dessert, the works. She stared at me for a beat longer than was comfortable. But then she smiled. Slow. Calculated. Okay, she said. If you're offering. Oh, I am, I said, stepping closer. Dress up. Bring your appetite. Let's make it a night to remember. She didn't know it yet, but I meant every word. That night, I watched her across the dinner table, legs crossed, wine in hand, her voice floating lightly over candlelight and clinking glasses as she laughed with her friends. She was radiant, untouchable, and completely unaware that I was already holding the final card. Back at home, while she soaked in the bathtub, humming again, I took the divorce folder out of its drawer. The papers were signed, filed, dated. All that remained was the timing, the delivery, and I knew when it would be. In front of her friends. At that fancy tapas place, under soft lights and curated smiles. She would finally perform her big line. I want a divorce. And I would simply respond. The restaurant was the kind with linen napkins folded like origami and servers who refilled your water before you realized it was half empty. We were seated in a candlelit corner booth, curved and intimate, the kind meant for whispered secrets and anniversary toasts. Jessica slid in beside me, her dress clinging to her like armor, silver heels tapping the floor like a metronome of confidence. Jenna and Marcy sat across from us, both already sipping sangria and buzzing with anticipation. Wow, Marcy said, eyeing the menu. Someone's feeling generous tonight. Jessica smiled, leaning into me like we were the picture of bliss. Michael's been surprisingly sweet lately. Haven't you, babe? I smiled. Just trying to be the man you deserve. Jenna snorted into her drink. Well, this is definitely a glow-up. What happened? You read a self-help book or something? Something like that, I said, folding my napkin across my lap. The conversation floated easily through appetizers, Jessica touching my arm lightly, laughing just enough, telling her friends how things have been better lately, surprisingly. I played my part perfectly. Her friends nodded and smiled, occasionally throwing her subtle looks like, is it time yet? By the time the dessert menus landed, the energy changed. Jessica leaned forward, set her wine glass down with care, and glanced at Jenna, then Marcy, then me. And I saw it in her eyes, the moment she decided this was it. Michael, she said sweetly, there's something I've been meaning to talk to you about. And I think it's better said here, with people I trust. I tilted my head, feigning concern. What's on your mind? She reached for my hand, placed hers on top, like she was offering comfort before a fall. I've been doing a lot of thinking. About us. About where we are, where we're going. I nodded slowly. Okay. And I realized something important, she continued. Sometimes, two people love each other, but grow apart. And that's no one's fault. It's just life. Jenna gave her a tiny nod, like she was prompting a rehearsed line. Jessica inhaled softly. So I think. I want a divorce. She said it with grace. With poise. Like she was offering me a gift. Her voice didn't shake. Her eyes didn't blink. I let the silence hang for half a second. Then I reached into my coat pocket and placed a folder gently on the table. Her name was on it. In bold. Already signed, I said calmly. Filed. 3 weeks ago. Jessica's smile cracked. Just slightly. What? She whispered. Jenna leaned forward, trying to see the document. Marcy's eyes flicked from the folder to me, to Jessica, and back again. You wanted a performance, I said quietly. I just beat you to the final act. The silence at the table was suddenly louder than the silverware clinking around us. Jessica blinked, as if the lights above had dimmed on their own. You filed already? I nodded. I heard everything. That day, in the kitchen. Jenna shifted awkwardly. Wait, what? I was home, I said, still calm. I heard every word. The plan. The strategy. The part where I was supposed to beg. Jessica's mouth opened, but nothing came out. And then, Marcy laughed. A high, sudden burst that startled all three of us. Oh my God, she wheezed. You didn't know? Jenna slapped her arm, whispering, shut up. But Marcy couldn't stop. This is better than I ever imagined. She actually thought she was running this. Jessica turned to them, stunned. What? Why are you laughing? Marcy wiped a tear. Because you got played, Jess. Look at him. He's not broken, he's brilliant. You didn't trap him. He trapped you. Jenna leaned back, folding her arms. Guess you weren't the queen after all. Jessica looked at me, her voice cracking now. You set me up. No. I said, folding my napkin gently. You set yourself up. I just gave you the spotlight. She stared at the folder like it might catch fire. I stood, buttoned my jacket, and looked down at her, calm, centered. You said you wanted a divorce, I said. You got it. Then I turned and walked out. And behind me, the show finally fell apart. She was waiting for me when I got home. Not on the couch, not in the kitchen. She was standing by the front door, heels off, makeup smudged from tears she didn't expect to cry. Her arms were crossed, but not defensively. She looked smaller than I remembered. Or maybe I just finally saw her without the mask. I was going to tell you, she said. I walked past her, set my keys in the tray by the door. You did. In front of your friends. In a restaurant. That wasn't how it was supposed to go. I turned to her, met her eyes. No. I'm sure in your version, I was supposed to break down. Cry. Offer you everything if you'd just stay. She flinched at that. Michael, it was a joke, she said quickly, reaching for the easiest lie. We were joking that day. In the kitchen. You took it all out of context. I raised an eyebrow. For 30 minutes? She hesitated. We got carried away. I wasn't really going to, Jessica. I cut in calmly. Don't insult me with that. She stepped closer, voice softening. I don't want this to be over. I was stupid, okay? I let them talk me into acting like someone I'm not. No, I said, shaking my head slowly. You are that person. You just didn't think I'd ever see it. She looked like she wanted to argue, to scream, to beg, but she did none of those things. I never thought you'd outsmart me, she said quietly. That's the problem, I replied. You never thought I could. Silence settled between us. Not tense, not dramatic, just final. You can't just throw away a marriage over one mistake, she said, her voice cracking. One mistake. I laughed softly, not mocking, just stunned. You turned our marriage into a manipulation seminar. You plotted with your friends how to humiliate me. You pretended to love me so you could leave on your terms. That's not one mistake. That's a campaign. Her lips trembled, but I didn't go through with it. No, I said I did. I went through with it. I made the decision you weren't brave enough to make, because you wanted control, not closure. Tears welled up in her eyes, and for a moment, I saw the version of her I used to love. The girl who used to wrap her arms around me in the kitchen and hum off-key into my neck. The woman who used to laugh without venom. But love doesn't excuse cruelty, and memory doesn't undo intent. She reached out. Can we talk about this? I stepped back. We just did. I walked past her, toward the bedroom. She didn't follow. Just stood there, barefoot and broken, in the doorway of the home we used to share. Before I closed the door, I turned back once. I didn't do this to hurt you, Jessica. I did it to save myself. Then I shut the door behind me. And for the first time in years, it felt like mine again. 1 year later, the house is smaller. Not in square footage, just noise. No tension humming behind closed doors. No silent tests. No rehearsed performances. Just peace. And breath. And the occasional off-key hum from across the room. Her name is Emily. She's nothing like Jessica. Not because she's sweeter or gentler or more supportive, though she is all those things. But because Emily doesn't play games. She doesn't pretend. She listens when I speak, even if I'm just talking about the weather. Tonight, we argued. Not about anything big. Just groceries. I bought the wrong oat milk, apparently, the kind that's too watery, the one she hates in her coffee. For a moment, I felt that old reflex, the defensive coil, the bracing for cold sarcasm, for a sigh that would make me feel like I'd failed some invisible test. But it didn't come. Instead, Emily blinked, realized she'd raised her voice, and softened. Sorry, she said, touching my wrist. That wasn't fair. I just had a long day. The milk's not that important. I stood there for a second, stunned by the sheer normalcy of it. Because this was love. Not perfection. Not grand gestures. Just two people who care enough to course correct mid-sentence. Later, we sat on the couch. Her head on my shoulder, a movie playing, mostly ignored. You've been quiet, she said. Just thinking. She looked up at me. About her. I nodded once. A little. Emily didn't flinch, didn't ask me to bury the past or pretend it never happened. She just reached for my hand. "You're not there anymore," she said softly. And I realized she was right. Jessica is a scar now. Not a wound. Not a weight. Just a reminder of how far I've come. And maybe that's what healing really is. Not forgetting what happened. Just learning how to live beyond it. If you've ever rebuilt yourself after betrayal, let me know in the comments. What did peace look like for you? Don't forget to like and subscribe for more true story scripts just like this one.